Thursday afternoon chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome today's guest, the Godfather, Mr. TobyMac. How are you, sir? The OG, the legend. Thank you for taking a moment. I always appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And I want to start this interview by saying thank you very much for making, I would say a highlight of 2021 for me is getting to meet my favorite comedian, Nate Bargatze, which you, oh, by the way, I went through two guys to get to Nate, you and my pastor, who's the pastor of one of the biggest churches in the state of Florida, Bayside. He said, he grew up with Nate Bargatze's brother. And so you beat him to get me to Nate real quick. But I do have, I have some, next time you're in Florida, I have people who want to take you golfing.
Let's do it.
The pastor of Bayside wanted to take you. So I just have to say that.
Well, I like Nate. Nate and I play golf together. I've told him a few jokes. He didn't laugh.
Yeah. Hey, you want to try this out?
I had the guts to tell him some jokes. I really did. It was so bad. I'm like, look, I'm going to tell you some, Doc. You might throw him in the show.
My wife laughed at this over dinner the other night. I want to pitch this to you for your next special. And those guys, guys like that have got to go, yeah, go ahead and tell me. But it's like a song idea. Hey, I got the song idea for you. Yeah. Thanks, man. I'll file that away.
He had nowhere to go. Me and him, golf bags, walking down the fairway. He had to listen.
Yeah. So who beats who in golf?
We haven't really played against each other. We played matches, so we played 2-on-2. I think he's beat me with his partner. I beat him. So I think it's pretty close.
Okay.
I think it's pretty close. Nate likes to mess with his swing all the time. I kind of keep it standard.
Right. Before we get into anything else, I want to give you the green screen behind us. All the artists get the opportunity to choose the background. So when we go to share some of these clips on socials, Mike Weaver, Big Daddy Weave, has the Egyptian pyramids behind him, which didn't work out quite well because he was discussing something that had me in tears, and there was a camel right over my shoulder chomping. So it doesn't always work out. But we gave you a whole list. What would you like to go with as a background?
I liked recess.
Oh, there you go.
Like school recess. That was the greatest moment of any school year.
I have a memory. This is the problem with doing so many interviews with so many of our artists. I remember the girl's name that you kissed in first grade before you took her to McDonald's.
You don't remember anything because none of that's true. It definitely, if I kissed a girl in first grade, I need to be beat up.
You said that too. You said that, and to anybody listening, I probably should have been beat up for doing this, but you took a girl on a date to McDonald's. Just outside of the school you went to, and I don't know if it's first grade, but elementary school.
Lulu Maru?
Yes, that's who it was. I knew it was an odd name.
Seventh grade.
Seventh grade. Okay. All you first graders, keep it together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait till seventh. So I have all these random facts about artists that stay in my head. And so I knew the girl Yeah,
I was hanging. I loved recess, man. I would just hang and talk. I loved being social.
Yeah.
I just loved hanging out with people, talking.
Let me change the screen here.
Bang.
There we go.
Recess.
All right. So we got, look at kids just being kids. There's no phones back here. No iPads.
No, shooting hoops and rubber kickballs.
That's right. Let's go. We've got new music to talk about. Toby's got a new album coming very soon. Promised Land is on that. We're going to play Promised Land. Actually, we're going to get to a story. There's a pretty cool story about Promised Land here in just a little bit. Yeah. But I just want to start. Usually it's like I got a whole list of things that we dive into, questions. I want to start this interview, whatever you want to, like, what is something that I want to give you the floor here in this first interview. If you want to talk about what's something big in your world lately besides golf, touring, family, just new seasons of life to talk to our audience about that you've been into lately.
Yeah.
Unscripted.
Yeah. I mean, I'm working, I did a bunch of makeup shows last year. Got them all finished, like makeup shows from COVID. A theater tour, makeup shows from when my son Truett passed. So it's been really emotional the last 2 years. We've looked at pain right in the eyes and have found our king to be the real king. I'm in the studio right now trying to write songs. At first, every song I wrote was really hard and really down. But God's bringing me around. He's showing me the promise. He's showing me the beauty in life, and the promise of the future, even heaven, and looking forward to that moment of reunion. Yeah. So there's songs to be written about all those things. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of life, the beautiful things. I try to stay right there. It's been cool. I mean, I know every artist loves their latest stuff. You know, I know how that works, but I do really love it because it's from a deeper, harder in some ways place, but it's also in a beautiful, redemptive place where God has been in my deepest place all that he promised he'd be.
I will say this about my last year, 2021, is I think the summary and the theme. I had a very difficult year that nothing to do with COVID last year, just life stuff. And something you said to me last year, I've been quoting to just about anybody that I've been talking to about difficulties I've gone through. I said, my friend TobyMac said this to me this past year after he lost his son and they had to walk through that. He said, I knew I was a Christian for so many years, but until you go through heartache, you no longer decide. You're not deciding you're a Christian. You have no other choice but to hang on to the cloak of God. And so I've been sharing that with my audience this year. After I heard you say that, I'm like, that is so true, because addiction stuff that I've gone through, only trauma and hard times have made me realize what you said was true, that I'm now holding on to the cloak of God for dear life. And I never used to do that through 44 years of being a believer. I never had.
Same.
And so, like,
it was too easy almost.
Yeah. And so I don't want to say we want trauma, we don't want heartache, but when you go through it, there's a blessing there of you finally get to see the presence of your maker.
Yeah. I read this yesterday, and I did it with home church with my kids. I just woke up and read this, and I said, that's it. It's out of the Message, Luke. And if you don't like the Message, sorry, just deal with this. Luke 6:20 says, you're blessed when you've lost it all. God's kingdom is there for the finding. And then it goes on to say, but it's trouble ahead if you think you haven't made, because what you have is all you'll ever get.
That's great.
God's kingdom is there for the finding when you've lost it all.
Yeah. TobyMac is my guest. There's new music from Toby coming soon. EP, maybe? Do we know that?
Full album. Record, baby, album. I don't care what you call it. It's coming out on vinyl too, so I can call it an album and a record.
Promised Land will be on there, and I want to go into Promised Land right here because I know you took an amazing trip last year to Africa, but it's a story that happened around a campfire with your father-in-law. Your wife was there, and was it your guide?
The guy that took us to Africa.
So how did it all play out with Promised Land and that campfire?
Well, the song, I was just writing it with Adam, AG, my friend, who you saw yesterday. Yeah. And we were around a campfire, and this guy had kind of flirted with God through his life, been back and forth, but was troubled. You know, he's from Africa, and he was a little troubled with the American church and what he saw in it, you know. And I don't know, we kept talking to him, and just the way we looked at things, the way we sort of saw God in everything, these animals, this beautiful landscape, you know, each other, the African people. And we were sitting around a campfire a couple nights before we left, and Amanda's like, sing Promised Land. I'm like, oh.
I'm not a singer, I'm a rapper.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, I mean, there's no instrument, there's no nothing. We're sitting around a campfire. Anyway,
give me a click track.
Yeah, so I sang it, and, you know, after I sang the song, my father-in-law, who's an unbelievable man from Jamaica, a godly man that is just alive in the King like no one I've ever met before in my life, just says to him, you know, I asked God into my heart in my office by myself when I was 38 years old. He said, this is your office. And we're sitting out in the African plains. He goes, would you like to ask God into your heart? He said, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And he said the sinner's prayer and asked God to come into his heart, asked Jesus to come into his heart. And it was amazing. We were all weeping. It was cool, but it was just, So that song is precious to me, if nothing else, for that moment.
Yeah. Your children are half Jamaican. And I always talk about this every Christmas because I play the heck out of your Christmas, Mary's Boy Child, Christmas this year, Bring on the Holiday, like all the stuff you did with Owl City, we play a ton of it. And so every time I talk about it, I'm like, his kids don't realize that spending Christmas in Jamaica is not normal. You kids are,
They've never not been there for Christmas. Yeah. They don't know Christmas other than that.
Right. Yeah, like my son, his whole life, I would always have a radio conference around his birthday because that's when the radio conference fell. So his birthday was always at the Disney Yacht Club in Orlando every year. And I'm like, he's going to think that your birthday party is always at a Disney Yacht Club.
It's just every year.
So I had to break that.
Automatic. And of all things, at the Yacht Club.
Yeah, right. Which Dad would never be able to pay for us to go to, but he thinks that's normal. But I bring this up to say my son and I are leading we've become friends with a family from Manchester in Jamaica from a previous soccer team he was on, and we bonded over the Premier League. And so a few months ago, they were like, hey, can we bring Boston with us? We go back to Jamaica every year to bring new cleats to these kids that play soccer barefoot in the streets. We'd love to bring Boston with us to hang out with our son. And I was like, that sounds great, but I would like to chaperone this. And so it's now become this thing that we're going to go run it's not some big production. It's a small soccer camp. And we're going to try to go every year to run the soccer camp in Manchester, Jamaica, bring boots to kids. So my question to you would be, as a white boy, what tips can you tell me about going to Jamaica that will help me enjoy my time? Yeah. How can I fit in? Yeah. I will have a guy.
Don't wear the hat with the fake dreadlocks.
My Rasta hat.
Yeah.
Leave that on the plane, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jamaicans are amazing people. They're like a lot of third world countries. They have a very positive outlook. They're super, in general, joyful people. Thankful people, even though a lot of people there have a very, very hard life. I think just respect, man. Just be kind, and say, you can also say respect, man.
Respect, man.
Respect, man.
If
you say that, then they'll know you're respecting them.
One of the members of this show, Steve the mechanic, grew up in Antigua as a missionary kid, so he's taught me a little bit of the,
That's why.
What is it? What's the phrase I always go to? Boy, don't. Which one you want? Which one you want? It comes up on the air. Everyone, don't drink the water. What do you know about that? The coconut water.
No, not water.
Yeah.
Water.
Drink from the pipe. Drink from the pipe.
Their wata is literally, it's called WATA on the label. Wata. Yeah.
All right. I'll be walking around going, you guys know TobyMac? Is he coming? Don't drop my name.
No, don't drop my name. Drop my father-in-law's name.
Oh, what is it?
Robert Levy. CEO, or not. Now he's the chairman of the board of Jamaica Broilers. Pretty much best dressed chicken. Any chicken in Jamaica, he's putting out.
Okay.
So it's like they all know him, and they know him from these ads too.
I've tried to become like him since I heard you describe the way Christmas dinner here. Everything is the greatest. This is the greatest meal. Yeah. My family is the greatest family.
We live in the most beautiful country in all the world. Like, everything is great. Everything is perfect. Wherever he is, it's the best.
Yeah.
And he means it like with his sincere heart.
Right.
And his favorite scripture, and I did a little song for him for his 80th birthday, is God, where David says, God has set my boundaries in pleasant places.
Huh.
And so I wrote a little song for him and sent it to him just for his birthday. But that's what a great outlook.
Yeah.
God has set my boundary. God, thank you for setting my boundaries in beautiful places
That's great.
Yeah.
Let's go with, I've never asked you, and this is good for me after so many interviews with you. It's hard for me having been on your tour bus for weeks at a time because you get spoiled being with an artist, like you're around each other a lot. So when it comes to, there's some people that have just discovered faith music and they don't know DC Talk. They don't know all your number ones. So I have to reinvent,
Right.
to try to take them places. If all they know is Help Us on the Way or Promised Land, you got to go to a new place. So it's
There's
hard.
a lot of them to go to.
Yeah. So I've never asked you this. What was a perk of one of your parents' jobs growing up? My dad worked in a grocery store for 40 years, hated it, changed the price tags. But at night, I got to walk around in a grocery store by myself, running the aisles. I guess PKs would have access to the whole church.
Right.
So one of your parents, if there's a thought like Mike Weaver, Big Daddy Weaves, like my parents worked in the Alabama state for the government, but there was an Arby's right across the street, and that's where he discovered the sausage biscuit. So that was a perk that came from going
my dad was a realtor in the DC area when Fairfax County was going crazy. I have an interesting childhood for this reason. When I was born, we lived in an apartment in Arlington. And then when I was 5, my dad made a little more money and we moved to a duplex in Arlington on Arlington Boulevard. Yeah. And then he moved to a townhouse. And then we moved to a suburban middle class home. Then we moved to a bigger home. So my dad was just kind of like his whole career, he was doing better and better. Right. And he was a West Virginia coal miner's son. So it was just interesting. And when you go back, so my dad met my mom in West Virginia. My mom went to like this college for a weekend, and my dad was like a senior, just graduated. He's like, nah, I'm taking you with me. Like, come on. So he married her, and they took off for DC, and my dad just flourished. Like, he just flourished. I mean, he was like, I'm not going to be a coal miner. Right. And it's interesting to watch my dad grow. But the most interesting part about his job was it wasn't interesting to go to his work. I would go to his work sometimes when he was showing clients' houses, not much. Right. But the most interesting thing is my dad loved sports, and he was a really good athlete. So he always had his real estate company is called White House Realty, and he always had a softball team for like 15 years. So I was always the bat boy, and he would always had access to gym. So we always would play basketball. So him and his friends would be playing, and I'd be playing. Me and my friends, I can invite all my buddies and play. Yeah. So I think it was that more than anything. He always organized rec sports teams, and sometimes on it they would go to like the World Softball Tournament. It was pretty serious. But for me, I just got to be around sports. So like the whole music thing for me was like, I thought music was soft. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I grew up in sports. I'm like, this is. So I always look at music and shows from like Kevin always says, Toby looks at shows like it's an athletic event. I'm like, I kind of do. Like, you're right.
Until you heard the Sugar Hill Gang, then it all changed.
It all changed.
I had somebody, one of my other guests this year was an old school, and it was Chris McClarney, and he's like, "Are you old school, Toby, man?" I'm like, does this help? And he's like, okay.
Go right before the king with the sting of my voice.
Oh, wait, hold on. I got to flip the cassette over.
Exactly. He's doing it.
That's so great. Oh, let's just go. This feels like a Christian radio 101 question, but there's something about, my artist talking about the word of God that I think, and we touched on it a bit earlier, but I don't want to put you on the spot with this without giving you some heads up on it, but YouVersion Bible app, always at the end of the year, they put out their most searched for, billions of downloads of the YouVersion Bible app, but here's the most searched for scripture of the year. And they always come out with that. So this past year, 2021, it was Matthew 6:33. God takes care of the lilies of the field. How much more will he take care of you? That was the most searched for. So I always love asking somebody, last year, 2021, can you think of one? Like, I can tell you right now what it was. I heard a Louis Giglio talk that wrecked me, and I've read the Bible through, but for some reason Habakkuk 3 never resonated until Louis was breaking it down about even if the grapevines produce no grapes, even if there's no cattle in the pens, I will still trust in the name of. And I was like, wow, put it on my body to remember
Wow.
forever. That was my one for the year that was like, even if everything falls apart, I would trust in the name of. What was it maybe for you from last year that you can think of?
Yeah.
Or,
I mean,
you can take time.
Yeah, I might take time, but I've been kind of just meditating, and I'm not a meditator. I don't say that in a weird way, but I've just been really enjoying the Sermon on the Mount in Luke. That's where that verse I read you earlier comes from, but it's just... So the long story is my wife and I took a trip to Israel about 2 years ago. And I'd never been to Israel. And, everybody says it's a life-changing thing. And it was. And Tate went in our group. And that was so fun to be with him for a couple of weeks. Like, it was just so fun. I missed him. Yeah. I see him. We talk. We text. But just to be with him day in and day out was so fun. My wife's like, she tells my kids, she's like, guys, I just want to tell you this. You have to remember this. Michael Tate's coming to dinner tonight. There's only one person in the world that when he comes over, your dad stops focusing on me. He focuses on him. He's the only person in the world where your dad is like, what else, Tate? What else, Tate? Tell me something else. It's like, she sets him up and prepares him for the dinner. Anyway, so we're there and we walk. This guy blindsided us. We walk up the hill, this guy that was our guide, and he starts just going into he's talking about what happened here, da-da-da-da, and then he just eases in to the Sermon on the Mount by memory. Like, it's really long. Yeah. And just lays it out there, and I was just stunned, like, by what it was saying. And picturing Jesus there saying that to those people, and then looking at where we are in culture, and contrasting where we are today versus what that's saying we are to be. Right. This is not a bash to the church thing at all. This is like me. Like, I'm not the man I need to be because I'm not that. Yeah. And it hit me hard, man. And it just seems like we chase empire. Yeah. We chase things. Capitalism has us, I'm not going to rant and rave. Yeah. It just has us conditioned to go after success. I definitely do that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that, but what is your Lord? Like, anyway, I'm not going to rant and rave. I'm no preacher. It's just, that's good. It just, if you read the Sermon on the Mount and you compare it to where we are, I think it would be a wake-up call. Yeah. Sheesh.
Yeah, that's great. I want to go. So, like, everybody's got stories like that. I was standing here, right, and I can I can go to Boston right now and go right where the massacre site is, and because they haven't changed it. It's like 4 people died right here on this step, and you can go, okay, they haven't touched it, so I can see what they saw, and history can take your breath away. Yeah. But that's the Boston Massacre. To go to places in Scripture to see what Jesus saw, this is not changed right here. Yep.
Yeah, I would say that the verse I've been just really enjoying, and I keep reading it. My kids are like tired of it. Like, we get it, Dad. But it's in Psalm 9. It says, "God's a safe house for the battered, a sanctuary during bad times. The moment you arrive, you relax. You're never sorry you knocked. You are never sorry you knocked on God's door."
That's great. All right, I'm gonna have to bookmark that. New music from TobyMac coming soon. We'll obviously be all over that, letting everybody know where they can pick it up as you just continue to keep on going. The Dick Clark. Oh, that's an old reference. The ageless one, but the quality is still the Toby quality. So much love. Always appreciate the time, my friend.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
The Thursday Afternoon Chat. Your favorite artists with Jayar.